Alrighty, hello everybody. Today we are going to be reviewing Obi-Wan Kenobi. So this show, I gotta say, off the hop, wasn't as good as the other two that I've watched so far. It wasn't as good as The Mandalorian, and it wasn't as good as the Book of Boba Fett. Now, did it still have its own? I kind of wish that it had. I think it wasn't as good because I guess it didn't really tie into the other two shows, and I guess it's just going to be a one-off, which kind of sucks that it was only a short series. Yeah, because it only lasted from 2022 to 2022. There's not going to be any more from the looks of it here now, anyway, unless something's been announced and I don't know about it. But it looks like it's just going to be a really short 6 episode show, which I mean, for something that was supposed to be so big and took so long to produce and actually get out on the screen, it feels like they kind of they kind of suckered us in and then gave us this show. Now, not to say that it wasn't still okay, but compared to the other two shows, I feel like it was lacking. Now, I know this is before, so where it is in the timeline anyway, Luke and Leia are children. So at this point, the whole Mandalorian Boba Fett stuff hasn't even happened yet. So at this point, it would have been just after, I guess, sort of when uh, Anakin becomes Darth Vader. And I think James Earl Jones has said that he's done doing the voice of Darth Vader now. So I guess maybe that's why they ended it, because it might take some time for them to actually find a new voice of Darth Vader. Now, it was pretty cool that Hayden Christensen reprised his role as Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker. I think that was pretty cool because we got to see some uh, pretty sick flashbacks of some stuff from like training sequences and obviously from the prequel trilogy, which I actually enjoyed. I know a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people are probably going to hate me for saying that, but I thought they were enjoyable movies. I haven't really been disappointed by a Star Wars movie yet. Not to say, now as a true Star Wars fan, obviously the original trilogy is the best. And if for most people, that is probably the case. That will always be the best series of movies. And I was actually able to find some, hopefully some untainted DVDs of the original trilogy, because I feel like they kind of ruined it with some stuff on the Blu-ray copies um, where they changed a whole bunch of stuff in the movies and added lines and so on and so forth. It just tainted the film. Like, you should be giving the original actor credit for the part that he played, right? But they changed it to where Hayden Christensen's, yeah, Force Ghost is in the movie, which doesn't make any sense because who knows what he would have looked like by the time he had aged, right? Anyway, not important. This is about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we have Leia, Princess Leia, as a child, and her mother and father, and she ends up getting kidnapped by the Inquisitors. Um, at least I do believe that's who she gets kidnapped by. And one of the Inquisitors. So the Inquisitors are just Jedi that have turned to the Empire's side and decided that they're going to hunt their own kind, which is kind of messed up because I guess instead of trying to, create a front and defend against the Empire, they just decided, we'll just join them. Why not? Who cares if we're killing our own kind, right? There shouldn't be any Jedi left, was basically the Empire's goal, right? Now, at this point in time, Obi-Wan Kenobi has no idea that Anakin is even alive because he left him for dead, but obviously Senator Palpatine decided that, or Darth Sidious decided that he was going to save him, right? And create this Darth Vader character. Or Darth Vader Sith Lord, basically. So Senator Palpatine has created this monster. Now, I guess at this point, Darth Vader doesn't really know the full extent of his powers yet, which is probably why Obi-Wan Kenobi had an easier time dealing with him at the very beginning. But because Jedi don't kill, he ends up just walking away from him and saying that his old friend is completely dead after almost defeating him. If he had just killed him there, none of the other stuff that happened in the other movies would have even happened. Which is kind of crazy to think about because Obi-Wan Kenobi could have just killed him, and yeah, that would have been the end of it. But he left him alive, and then we obviously know what happens in Rogue One, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of unfortunate. But I guess if Obi-Wan had have done it, maybe he would have ended up turning to the dark side and becoming the Sith Lord himself. So he has to kind of restrain himself and still follow the Jedi ways. Now, it seems in the very beginning of the show that he's obviously getting older, so he's losing some of his power. And the one Inquisitor that so the one Inquisitor, Inquisitor Reva, or the third sister, seems to have this odd obsession with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Kind of the same as, obviously, Darth Vader does, knowing that he's Anakin, in defeating him. Now, I guess Reva kind of blames Obi-Wan Kenobi for what happened to her as a child, but it seems that for some reason, when Anakin was going nuts and killed everybody in the movie, that he left her alive. Now, I don't really know why. Maybe he saw some sort of potential in her as a recruit, obviously, and it gets to the point where Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of gets in her head and says that she could probably kill Darth Vader, but that's not what ends up happening. And then when she finds out that, I guess she kind of knew all along that it was Anakin, that it was Anakin Skywalker in there. She had known all along because of what had happened to her as a child, but I guess she kind of turned to the dark side anyway, which seems kind of weird that she would. It seems that a lot of them are turning, but they're also kind of working with the rebels. From the inside, right? So, honestly, to be completely honest, I was told before this show that Darth Vader doesn't really do that much, but he kind of seemed like it was kind of odd. Even though it was an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, I would almost say that the driving forces were honestly the driving forces that kept the show going were Leia and Darth Vader. I that's just my opinion for me anyway. Um, yeah, and you could tell that Darth Vader did not care who he killed. Like, just to get whatever he wanted, he was killing women, children. Like, this show showed how little remorse he had for human life. And even when Obi-Wan Kenobi was on the ship, um, and or I guess maybe it was underwater, like the one facility. Yeah, I guess technically it would still be a ship though, because they were on water. So yeah. Anyway, uh, it's basically a grave for all of the people that Darth Vader has taken. Now, what was the stuff that Han Solo was frozen in? It was kind of the same as that, almost. All the people that he had taken and basically frozen. So it was just like a mass grave on this site or whatever that they were at. Now, what was I going to say? Okay, so there was one woman on the inside, Tala Dureth, who was really helping him out. And he meets Haja Estri, who was pretending to be a Jedi on another planet, and he ends up helping him out. And then obviously he had Tala on the inside, right? But she ends up getting killed when, when Reva comes along and tries to break into the compound they're in, and it kind of seems like their last hope or whatever, because obviously Kenobi's being hunted by more than just one person. So he ends up having to leave in order to save Leia's life, and Leia is returned to her, well, her adoptive family anyway, because originally we obviously know that Anakin and Padme are her mother and father. And because Obi-Wan Kenobi is trying to protect her, he can't tell her any of that, right? Which is unfortunate because he could tell her more about her mother, but I guess if he started to really open up about the story, she would find out that her father is Darth Vader, and that wouldn't be any good. And then also, obviously, Luke finding out that his father is Darth Vader in the movies too, right? Because he's just a kid at this point, and he's being taken care of by... Now, where are they? So, Leia's adoptive parents are Senator Bail Organa, and who was the mother? She's got to be here somewhere. You would think she would be here. So, Luke is being taken care of by Owen Lars, and his wife's name was... Oh, and Brea Organa was Leia's adoptive mother, and then Beru Lars was Owen's wife. Okay, cool. So now that we've gotten that all out of the way, so those were her parents. So she runs away and, yeah, gets captured, right? And then Obi-Wan Kenobi has to go and save her. But she doesn't realize that she's being... Well, she does actually realize that she's being used as a pawn in order to draw Obi-Wan Kenobi in. Because the Inquisitors obviously want him for Darth Vader. That's kind of the main goal of the show, is to have him killed. And it seems like he's been defeated, or at least Darth Vader thinks he's defeated him. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of, I guess, gets his powers back in a sense. It seems that he's stronger the closer he is to Anakin. Like, he becomes more powerful again. Which is kind of weird, because it seems like at the beginning of the show he's losing his powers. And maybe that's because he hasn't been really using the Force in a long time. And I mean, he is getting older. So I suppose maybe because he hasn't been practicing it as much, I guess maybe he might lose some of the power. But then when he has to fight, he really kind of... Maybe that's the thing. I guess when it's fight or flight, right, you kind of maybe are able to do some of the things you wouldn't have been able to do for years. But yeah, so there was some pretty cool battle scenes in this show. But I don't think that made up enough for the storyline. Like, I thought this show was going to be more about Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it ended up being more about kind of Leia and Luke and them as children. Now, not to say that that was necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think this show really should have been named Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, what would they have called it? I'm not really sure. If they hadn't have called it Obi-Wan Kenobi, I guess just because he was in it, maybe that's why they called it that. I'm not really sure. They probably could have gone for a different title, though. But I mean, at least we got to see Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi one more time. So yeah, Ewan McGregor obviously as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm just reading the cast list now. Moses Ingram played Reva, or the third sister. Vivian Lyra Blair played Leia Organa. Oh, so she was actually... Oh, but I guess because she was adopted, right, they would have changed her last name, I suppose. And then... Or, yeah. Oh, right, because Padme's last name... No, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Because what was Padme's last name in the movies? Now I'm trying to remember. But I guess, yeah, I guess that makes sense, seeing as they were her adoptive parents. Yeah, okay. And then Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker. Sung Kang, who is from the, isn't he the Fast and Furious franchise? Yeah, okay. From the Fast and Furious franchise, played the fifth brother, which I had no idea. Rupert Friend played the Grand Inquisitor, who was, like, basically, at this point, Darth Vader's, like, right-hand man. And then James Earl Jones did the voice of Darth Vader. It's going to be interesting trying to find a new voice. Kumal Nanjiani, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, played Haja Estri. O'Shea Jackson Jr. played Roken. He was, I think he was a pilot, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not really sure what his role was, to be completely... He wasn't in the show for very long anyway. He was only in it for a couple episodes. And then Indira Varma played Taladurith, who was Obi-Wan Kenobi's kind of like really was how Obi-Wan Kenobi stayed alive for most of the show because she helped him a lot. Jimmy Smith played Senator Bail Organa, and Joel Edgerton played Owen Lars. Bonnie Peace played Biru Lars, and then Simone Kessel played Brea Organa. And at the very end of the show, a Force Ghost appears when Obi-Wan Kenobi has decided to leave everything behind him with Luke, because he said the boy needs to be trained, right? But he realizes that Luke just needs to be a child, and he can be trained much later on in life. So Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of rides off into the sunset, and at the very end, Qui-Gon Jinn's Force Ghost pops up, so we got to see Liam Neeson reprise his role for, even if it was a short period of time, as Qui-Gon Jinn. So that was pretty cool, just to see that. Other than that, yeah, I don't think there is much more to talk about in the show, other than the fact that Leia was way ahead of her time. Such a smart kid. And I guess that kind of shows when she grows up, like how good she is at battle strategy and how cunning she is and how she can get herself out of almost any situation. Because if she was that smart as a kid, obviously you're just going to kind of learn more as you go, right? Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And what else? What else can I really say about the show? Yeah, it wasn't as good as the other two shows, and I only gave it a 7 out of 10, and that kind of seems to be the general consensus on IMDb anyway, which with a 7.1. So, yeah, I feel like maybe they were kind of right in a sense that with so many shows, it's kind of hard to make them all good, I suppose. Now, who was the director on this show? Deborah Chow. So I kind of feel like maybe, yeah, I don't know. She's kind of competing with Jon Favreau on those two shows. So it might be somewhat harder. Now, she's known for The Mandalorian, so she's got her hand in that. Better Call Saul and American Gods. So, I mean, she's done work on some pretty good shows. I just don't think this was quite as good as the other two shows that Jon Favreau was working on. Now, I guess maybe we'll see. I can't imagine that Jon Favreau's not working on season 3 of The Mandalorian. That's kind of interesting to know whether he is or not. I'll go check that after I'm done this. But yeah, 7 out of 10 for this show, and I will see you guys in the next review. Bye-bye for now.